Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Aspiring Adult Podcast. My name is Alexandra Hayek, and I'm your host. Today we have Faith. Faith is a friend of mine. Well, I met her through my brother, but we're friends now. Um, yeah. Faith, do you want to introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Hello. Yeah, we did meet through your brother, but I'm so grateful that we did. I'm also from Houston, Texas. I transferred to the University of Texas at Austin during my sophomore year. A little bit more about myself. I studied applied learning and development, youth and community studies with a concentration in youth and social services with a minor in kinesiology. Um, but yeah, now I'm out here living in Des Moines, pretty far from Houston and away from Alex. I mean, Alex also moved across the world to LA. So we're both living in that, just kind of far from home.
Yeah. So, can you tell people kind of what you're, because I know it's a mouthful to say, but um, you studied like developmental, I guess you could call it like developmental studies or something. But
Yeah.
now you're doing um something way different. So can you tell people about like what you're doing now and kind of how you got there, essentially?
Yeah. Yeah. I always wanted to be a teacher. And I even like I feel like in the second grade when I saw teachers use like the type of projector where you can write on the projector itself. I was like, that is so cool, and I want to do that. Whatever, like astronaut, business person you want to be, I don't care. I want to be able to write on a projector. But I also had really fantastic teachers growing up that made like learning really, really fun. And I didn't realize until I got older how little like amount of people got to experience that type of learning and the fun that learning can be. So going into UT Austin, because graduating during COVID, um, I was a chemistry major at first, going to LSU, and I always loved chemistry because of the patterns. It was able to like I was able to replicate, and once I got it, I really understood it, and I enjoyed math and the challenge that came with that. But that was more like my passion of learning rather than like the passion of chemistry. I loved the idea of like that moment of the click in your brain of like, oh, I got it. And that became kind of addicting. But during COVID and like doing community college, my first year of college, pretty quickly I learned that a lab setting wasn't for me and like not necessarily the material. It was more the atmosphere that I was learning. It wasn't fun for me anymore. And all of the getting a degree in chemistry was kind of like a stepping stone in my head to be a teacher. Like in order to teach chemistry at the high school level, you have to have a degree. And I just and loved my chemistry teacher. I was like, I want to do that. That's so much fun. That's like the most fun class, even though like there's definitely difficult parts of teaching chemistry. It was more the excitement of being able to do so. So funny enough, when I was applying to UT, I applied on like my last day, which was like probably shouldn't have done that. And I actually applied for a graduate program. So I got an email being like, hey girly, you should probably change your major because you don't have a bachelor's. And I was like, oh, okay. So I clicked applied learning development, youth and community studies, because I knew I didn't necessarily want to teach little kids. Like the littles is what I feel like education majors call them, like the littles. I thought the most fun for me would be with older kids, just more like conversation and actually learning style. With younger kids, it takes one patience, but creativity in a way that I don't think I possess the elementary level of excitement and joy. So I clicked on it being like, youth and community studies, that sounds like right up my alley. And then during orientation, they go through the different types. So at UT Austin, at the College of Education, there's kind of three big bubbles, but applied learning and development is a general term for all education majors. And I knew going into college I wanted to also have a more broad degree. That's why chemistry can be a bit more broad depending on like what I want to get my master's in, and it being able to grow with me. And so during orientation, they go through all the different degrees. I'm like, I think mine is for me. And the more I went to class, which everyone should do, the more I realized that this was the degree for me. And although there's people out there that will say that education is an easy degree, I have a lot of opinions on that, but separate. I learned and understood the importance of equity in education and teaching and the joy of being able to teach others and the skill that it requires. But right now, I'm working for a software company that specializes in modernizing government software. So I'm still teaching, but although I didn't want to teach littles, now I'm teaching like grown adults who work for the government and how to use the software to do their job. Yeah, I'm in Iowa tax, which is super exciting and fun. People love talking about taxes. Yeah, so it's very different from where I initially started from wanting to be in a classroom. But yeah, it's been pretty great other than, business casual attire compared to like my colorful closet. Definitely have to like tone down your personality in the sense that you're working in a government office and that you're working with, you know, 50 to 80-year-olds who think that wearing pink makes you stupid and dealing with that and, keeping your own identity, but also it's kind of a performance in a way to teach government officials how to use software, but it's been really great.
So, like you said, like you've made a huge deviation, right? In what you thought that you were going to start with and when where you've ended up. And I guess I have like two questions. First, like, do you think like in the future, do you want to go back to like regular teaching or not? Like, I feel okay, that's my first question. Like, where do you see yourself like in your career wise? Do you want to stick with this? Do you want to go back to like teaching in schools? Like, what do you think that that looks like for you now that you've made kind of this big change, and that you like it?
Yeah, I think for me right now, like I'm mostly focused on getting settled in the new career, and learning all, the tax lingo. And my company also works with any sort of government software. So, the SVW, it's like so like driver registration, taxes. There's also child services. I know we're up in Alaska now. So for me right now, like my lock-in is trying to understand the different facets of the company that I joined. But I hope in the future that I'm able to, on the side, like for my own personal growth and like, well-being, I hope to work with kids still. Either whether it be youth sports, which I'm also very passionate about, and the community that comes with youth sports. I think that's something that I really care about and wanting to make sure that kids have like a healthy experience with sports because it's fun and it should be fun. But that's more of like on the personal side rather than career side. I think there's like two sides of the same coin. Like I want to grow my career, but definitely like for my own like goals in life is to make an impact on others. And I don't think I'm necessarily making an impact on these 55-year-olds, which maybe they think I'm great or maybe smart enough to be a 22-year-old teaching them something. But my end goal is to make an impact. So yeah, trying to like balance both of those, like that initial goal that I had to help others, um, and taking the advantage that I have now by having more of a corporate job and helping those communities that I sought to be a part of before.
That's so cool. Um,
Yeah.
and I feel like, you know, like we've said, like it's so early, yet to be like really set in whatever you want to do. But I think it's good to like, I think it's interesting to like think about how this might have like changed your perspective on maybe not what you want to do, but like how you're gonna do it, right? Like, at first you wanted
Yeah,
to be like a
exactly.
regular teacher, but now you're like, okay, well, I could do it this way instead. Um,
Hmm.
and so with that, my next question is, what is the thing that has most surprised you about this stage of your life? Like looking back, what are your like, how does it differ from your expectations?
I don't think I ever thought I would end up where I am. Um, I guess what's so shocking, I always relied on like my skill and my knowledge to get me places and rather than connections. I mean, I grew up in a community that is known for having money, but I didn't. And so people all around me had these connections, and I never thought I would be able to have that sort of connection that would get me to a place where, at 22 and the economy the where it is, like being able to afford my own apartment by myself, no matter the state or city that I'm in or country. Um, I always had big aspirations for myself. I always knew I wanted to do something big and be able to help others because I've realized like a key component of who I am. It kind of consumes my brain. As soon as I get an ounce of money, I think of where I can put somewhere else because I've always had people, luckily, in my community be able to pay it forward. But the transition and the idea of like what I wanted to be, I think growing up, I was always told to be a lawyer, um, being able to argue and state your point. But I think teachers are also in that same avenue of being able to tell people exactly the way it is and taking that sort of like bossy mindset into another sector. But I don't think I ever would have thought I would have been a corporate trainer for a software company at all, or what that looked like. Because for me, like, I'm very grateful for the trainers that are a part of my team because, looking at computer, or software engineer people, it's very different avenue of life that they took and what they imagine their life, and working with people who, their job is computer and my job was like people. It's a very interesting mix, but I'm very grateful for the people a part of my team. And it only makes me realize how wonderful and great educators are. The environment that I'm working in is so wonderful because I'm surrounded by people who have studied how to talk to others. And those are the people training me. So like going to work, it kind of just feels like fun, even though I'm like learning. I don't feel stupid asking questions. Um, but it is definitely a transition. And I guess being, a girl, 22, coming from Texas, people see me as naive. And I've actually been told that was like their first impression of me was naive.
I actually think that you're like the opposite of that.
Yeah, I just found it like super interesting that that's how I was like perceived in like the office setting. And I, you know, kind of wonder if it's because I always want to like lead with kindness in the workplace, these are people I'm going to see every day. I don't want to make my problems theirs type of mindset. Like if
Yeah.
I didn't get enough sleep, maybe I'll tell my coworker like, "Oh, I'm so tired," but I'm not going to, drag on to someone else's day. Um, and that plus I always want to make sure I'm doing things for myself. So in the morning, making sure I'm 100% myself. Actually, my sorority motivated me to be like that. Like we were running late. She was like, I'm always going to leave the house feeling ready. And I was like, oh, that's something that I can do. Like that's something that I can make time to do and make myself feel good. And it's interesting, being a young woman going into the workforce and being told that you looked and perceived as naive. But I mean, even being told that gives me the advantage in the sense of like if people think you're naive, then
Yeah,
you
they
can learn a lot.
yeah.
Because like people don't think you know anything, so they'll tell you anything. uh and keeping that to yourself and learning what the balance is of like what information I do want to hear has been an interesting learning curve of like before I'm like, oh, give me all the information about the workplace, but I'm now kind of realizing that I'm like, maybe I need less, maybe I don't need to know, the intermixing of that for me to be successful in the job that I'm here to do in
Hmm.
order to maintain that work life balance that I'm looking after. Um, because like joining the corporate world compared to being in education, there is a definite like work in life. Like definitely like teachers 100% um, do so much for the students outside, but as soon as they're clocked out, they're still themselves in a sense that like you're your teacher self, or you don't curse, you don't talk about certain things, you don't talk about the movies or shows you watch, you're there to educate others. But in the corporate world, it's really, I feel like, more difficult to separate your interests with your work and what you talk about other people, because it's like we're all grown adults. I'm used to working with kids. I'm used to that filter of like what I let out. I mean, I'm still definitely trying to find that filter for myself of like what I want to keep to me versus like what I want to share with people who work in the office. But yeah, being told I look naive was definitely like a interesting moment of like self-reflection of like, is it because how I look, how I talk? And I think maybe that's my youth and community studies major coming in, being like, what about me made them perceive me as being naive? Was it that I showed up with a smile at the tax office? Who knows? But I guess we'll only find out over time. I guess when there's some new people coming in, maybe I can see it, but
Yeah,
you only learn with time.
true. I mean, I guess also like you said, it's your first like corporate job. So I feel like it's only fair to be naive in that sense. You know what I mean? Like, I think it's so interesting that people will say that to you when like, what am I supposed to do? Like, n just know right off the bat? Like, obviously I'm naive. Like,
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, of course I'm naive about how the tax office works because I'm 22 fresh out of college. Um, and I guess like more of a cultural standpoint of like naivety, like they may think I'm naive in the sense of the office, but I'm not naive in the sense of the world. Like I always try to keep updated on things that are going on. Like I even ask you questions about when you're posting. Sorry, I don't know if this is what you want on your podcast about Venezuela.
no worries
And
about anything. Yeah.
I always want to make sure I'm like aware of the things going on around me and the things that are important outside of the office, because my world and my life and my brain lives outside of the office. So like naivety, I think like being perceived as naive is a benefit, but the interesting note is like, why did you think that? Like, is it because I didn't know that everyone wore heels on the first day of the month? I don't know. But I definitely know about things going on around me for sure. Definitely taking note of, either people, interpersonal relationships, or, uh, globally, or even within the state, just trying to stay on top of things because knowledge is power. I think that's why I went into education and understanding that the more knowledge I gain, the more influence I'm able to dispose. The only reason I feel like I really want to learn more is to be able to share with others. Like I will take the time and to understand it and be able to communicate it to people every day. Like, oh, did you know? Like type of things. I always find those really fun to be able to share with others.
Yeah, that's so it's I feel like that really shines through in like your personality. Also, like I don't know, like I said, like you're always really interested in others and like everything that's around, so I'm not surprised that like, you know, you're the way that you are. And I am surprised that people have told you that you're like naive. That's why I was like, what? But I wanted to kind of ask you, and this will segue into like my next question, but were you like, have you always been that way, like since you were a kid? Or do you think it's something that like, I don't know, you started like like becoming more curious about things with age?
Yeah, I mean, growing up, my like saying, because my all my siblings and cousins are a bit older, and all my siblings and cousins are around the same age, and we all grew up together very close. But because I was so much younger, they would go and play, and I couldn't really play in the same way that they could because of the age gap. Because you can't take a 4-year-old with a 10-year-old to the same thing at
Yeah.
the end of the day. Like But my saying growing up, when I would go watch my siblings play, my aunt will still like quote it to me as like I would like look out the window watching them play, be like, I love peoples. And that was like I just loved like being around other people. And the best way to be around other people is to learn about them.
Mm,
Um, and to understand what it means to communicate and be present and um I guess so the do's and don'ts of what to say to people and knowing like the signals of when people want to open up and when they don't and how to navigate that, I think has always been super fascinating. Like it's not like I study it, it's just like day-to-day life. You learn by trial and error of how to get to know people better. So I think I've always been fascinated. I've always loved making friends and the process of making friends. And I think like even in the corporate world, and teaching, it's kind of building this friendship and respect for each other that I find like really fun and getting to know like people's inner workings. I just love people's. So I think it's something that's always been a part of me. But I think how much I care about things other than outside of my community has definitely grown. The more I've learned, the more I've realized like I always understood I grew up even though I grew up low income, like house getting foreclosed on or whatnot, things, family drama left and right. I knew my family had their struggles, but the more you learn about other people's, like using that empathy, I feel like I've always had really drives me forward. Like I'm glad I still cry about people who I'll never meet. And that really drives me forward. And like, how can I make the little things better? Um, I know maybe not right now. I can't, change the world like UT Austin likes to say, but I can do like my little piece of my bubble. Like even if it just means like making sure all my friends feel loved and supported. That's I kind of feel like that's my job in my life is to make the people around me feel loved. So using that to navigate myself forward, either corporate world being like, I'm here to listen either way. Like I can teach about software, but if you're super tired and you had kids up until 2 in the morning, like I have that empathy to be like, okay, well, let's find another way for you to be able to learn this. Because like it's required for your job, but you're exhausted and we can't learn like this. So like I can talk to you later or whichever not. Just meeting people where they're at, I think is like definitely a skill, but it's a skill that I don't think I would ever change for anything, like cut off my arm instead of taking that sort of, I guess, thought process. Uh, I think being a woman has definitely been a deterrent in some of the things. Like some people just take it as me being kind instead of being like intelligent about how people communicate um, and thoughtful. Because I think a lot of how I navigate communicating in the business world is it tends to be very thoughtful. Um, you know, even though I don't do the same thing that these people in the tax office are doing, but building community takes more than just having like, oh, what'd you have for dinner last night? Um, but it is definitely something I've grown to appreciate more. I grew up being told like I was too emotional. I was a crier of the family. Like I cried over everything. Um, but I feel like the path that I'm in, I've taken that like thing that used to be known as like a weakness of like rooting for the underdog and trying to use that as a token for my career, like trying to push me forward, taking the thing that I can't help and use that to like navigate my life in a sense.
that's awesome. I love that you like have so much empathy for others and you want to do so much to help. And I hope nobody ever takes that away from you. But my next question that I wanted to ask you is and this doesn't necessarily have to do with like because I know you've made a big jump like career wise. Um
Yeah.
this question doesn't necessarily like pertain to your career, but how did you imagine yourself at this age where you were younger? More so like the type of person that you are. Has that changed a lot? Has that changed? Has that not changed at all? I know you said that you've always had like this empathy, but like in other ways, I don't know, like how much you feel that you've changed?
There's definitely different facets of myself that I continue to learn about, like, the balance of being social and loving the community that I build around myself. Growing up, I was always very like headstrong, and I found myself, leaning away from that as much because I find that it doesn't prove to be as successful a lot of the times. I guess the main thing I've kept true is believing in myself. I think I've always had a really good self assurance and like if I really want to do something, I can do it. Maybe not become an astronaut like I used to want to be, but if I want to be successful and I guess the real world, as others like to say, taking those different things of like determination, knowing that if I really want something, I know like in my heart that it will happen because like who I become when I really want something is insane. I will dedicate way too many hours, and that's something that no matter the difference in career or change, I know if I care for it and if I want to be successful, I'll dig into it. But it definitely has changed. Like, throughout college, before I, never went out, I never really did anything, I perceived as like bad or as a distraction. But I found, throughout college that that distraction, I guess, gave me more of like my personal life versus work life. In high school, really digging into school and being really like working hard at dance. Those were like at the end of the day kind of career things for how do I say it? I guess like that facet of myself.
Yeah.
And then going to college and at least as big of a University of Texas, it really grew of what I thought of myself. Like my identity expanded into more than what grade I got, what others thought of me even definitely grew. But I think the joy of change, I think the excitement of change has always been a part of me. Even moving all the way to Des Moines, Iowa from Texas, where no one is from here, people were like, "Have you cried? Are you scared?" And I'm like, I've always learned to be welcome of change because the times I've been scared, like I just in retrospect think I'm stupid. I'm like, there's no helping change. And learning to embrace that change is like only better. So whoever I become in Des Moines, Iowa will only grow a part of me. So like I not necessarily like change per se, like my whole personality has shifted. It's only like a growing part. I always think of like little add-ons of like, oh, I've always been like who I was, like no, kindergarten through high school, sort of like that. Stay at home, like you've been a part of this community. I had a very set routine. And then being sent to college away from family, very big school. And I my mom didn't go to college, and so my idea of college was very much like this is where I needed to be in order to have a career. Um, but growing and meeting people had I just learned that that's just like part of my favorite thing to do. But also learning that the things that I feel like might be feeling as changes are just like an addition to who I already was. It's not necessarily like a whole reroute of me and all that jazz. It's more like an addition, like I just have a different facet of myself.
I love that it's like that you see it as like not necessarily it changing, but adding on. All right, so my last question for you is what is something that you're overcoming or that you're looking forward to? And you can answer both questions or you can just answer one.
I mean, a part I'm definitely overcoming is, still I think maybe people as old as 55 is like coming to terms of who you are and what you're meant to do. Um, because here in Des Moines, I don't really have any friends. I don't have people who, you know, even going to UT Austin. There's people from Houston, obviously, we know each other, and I found a lot of connections through like being close to home. But something I guess I'm definitely struggling with, I guess something I've repeated is that work-life balance of I found a lot of great friends within my trainers at work, but my life isn't my job.
Hmm.
Making sure I make that clear distinction. But you know, it is really hard being young and new in a new city and trying to find people that you click with, in the sense of like everyone that you like I already have lovely, wonderful friends. And like, you know, there's always room for more love in my heart, but it's always kind of hard to compare the friendships that you've already had to the ones that you're building. It's so easy for me to be like, well, I already have my best friends. Like, I don't need any more. I don't need to build, like, it's very easy for me to be like, well, this is fine, but I have my people. And I do. I already do have people in my life that I love and I care about. And no matter what, wherever I move, I will still care and love for them. Um, but definitely a struggle is, finding new people that I find that same type of love with, especially because I know I'm going to be here temporarily. Um, I know I'm only in Des Moines until 2026. I mean, that's my hope. I can definitely stay here if I find more, but the my position at this company is that I move every year to 2 years. So it's a bit different than college where you know that these people are going to be around for at least 3 years. Um, and there's a thing in Texas that Texans don't like to leave Texas. So I'm like, either they're going to be in Dallas, Houston, or San Antonio or Austin. Like I can make that commute, but it's definitely a struggle trying to find me in a new city because the me that I knew in Austin needs to be different than the me in Des Moines. There's different things that to do here, whether that be getting into a new hobby or something else. But again, that's something I'm just going to have to add on to things that I know. And it snows here. How to deal with the cold in a way that I'm genuinely concerned about, separate to like the ice on the ground. But family being in Utah, you know, there's a cold depression that happens that where people can't go outside, you don't really see the sun. And that's always been kind of, growing up in Texas, that's not something I'm scared of going outside. I mean, maybe in August and 110, I might
Yeah,
like cry,
for different reasons.
but for different reasons, for sure. Um, but, you know, that's definitely a fear of mine. And I guess growing to accept those fears because everyone has them. And even like listening to your podcast, it gives me some like calm in a sense. Like anxieties can raise as soon as you're in an unfamiliar territory. Like you're like, I'm doing everything wrong. Everyone's doing this, everyone's doing that. Um, but trying to take a step back and look at the bigger picture of like, wait, my friends are cool as fuck. Like they're doing crazy shit that like I am so proud of my like friends of doing all this stuff and then being reflective, being like, oh, well, maybe I'm one of the party of like, maybe we're all doing cool things. And it's cool that we all know each other and we're all supporting each other. We're all these young adults and growing up in this world that we don't know what the law is going to be the next day. But at least I know that I have very dedicated friends who are smart and thoughtful and caring and that they're doing great things and I can continue doing great things with them. Um, and something I'm looking forward to is definitely the independence that has come with taking this sort of corporate job compared to the public education route. I never thought that I could be in the position I am right now, at least at this age, and the economy and the things that way it is, at least for public educators, being able to afford a new apartment in a new city is very impressive. And maybe not others think
It is.
so, but
No, it is.
um, but I'm just looking forward of who I'll be able to become, the people I meet, the cities I get to explore, and I'm very grateful for the position that I'm in. I think growing up, with a single mom of three, she was a teen mom. I lead with gratitude with the things I'm able to experience. So the things I'm looking forward to is also being able to support those who have supported me. So like being able to do things for like my mom, my sister, my family, I think that is what really pushes me forward and what like motivates me. Like next time we go on our Halloween Universal trip or whatever it is, like I can get my mom the pin or the shirt that she wants because I'm now in the position because of like, how my community set me up for success.
Yeah.
Um, that definitely, I'm just excited to be able to like share finally, rather than like I need this, I need money for food. Like finally being able to one be like, well, my dad hasn't had a vacation in a long time, maybe giving him the opportunity to do that. That is something that I'm really excited for. You know, plus my feet don't touch the wall on my bed, which is pretty awesome moving from Austin.
I'm so excited for you and to see like the rest of your journey and how this chapter is going to be for you. Um, and I just want to thank you for coming on the podcast and doing
Of
this.
course.
Anything else that you want to say before we wrap up?
Well, there's a lot of things I would like to say about you and you have this determination and veracity of what you want to do that I reflect even in my own day to day. I think the main thing for me to share to you is that I'm so proud of everything that you have been able to do and your accomplishments, and also your bravery is, I think, something that you might not get credit for, but I think you should. You know what you want to do, you're going for it, and you move to a brand new city in a sense that I will never understand. 'Cause you have this drive and passion for, you
Delusion.
know, it's not delusion, it's dream. And everyone deserves to dream, and you have one, and you have the capability to live out your dream through the hard work that you're doing. Um, I don't want to minimize, even though like I as funny as delusions can be, but calling it delusion is minimizing your commitment to your dreams. Um, because people might call it delusional, but it's passion and it's awesome. And I think you're doing great. And
Thanks.
I'm grateful to have you as a friend
I'm great.
because
You as a
we're two guys of the same coin and you're awesome. And even having this conversation and what I'm doing, I mean, like I all I want to do is turn over the mic to you and be like, how are your dreams changed? And da 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 da. And that's like more building on that conversation of you because I think as much as like people around us are doing great things and interviewing others and their goals and aspirations, I think what you're doing is very inspirational. Through your health stuff and education and living and moving so far away from everyone. There's only few people in our sphere, at least our bubble, our community, that really, I guess, fully understand the fear and overcoming the fear, um, and the bravery it takes. So I think you're awesome, and I think you're very brave. And I find peace within myself knowing that you're kind of in the same boat as me and that we're all kind of doing it together. Um, because it can feel very isolating at times, going after these big ideas, and people telling you like, oh, that's too much in rent. Oh, you're stupid. There's no job in that, especially in education. Throughout college, people are like, you're making no money, ha ha. And I'm like, I got a job in a new city, meeting people and trying to like practice these skills that I've, thought I learned a lot about in college, but it's more about putting them to practice. Uh, Going out into public, even earlier today, I don't have friends here that are Texas fans, and deciding I'm gonna just go to walk somewhere and see where they're playing a game and try to make friends. Um, and taking everything step by step and knowing that I have people around me like you, Mateo, my family, my friends like Julia. I don't need to name all of them, but just knowing I have love and support is I'm super grateful. I'm grateful for all the opportunities that I've been able to have based on where I grew up and the people I knew, and I know the privilege that I've been able to have. And taking everything day by day and living it with gratitude and with love and with kindness is something that even on days I only get 3 hours of sleep because I stayed up watching a movie, you know, still being kind to the people around me is sort of a reminder, and knowing that even when I'm tired, I can send you a text or my family a text being like, today sucked. And I guess that's my overall advice is that just take it step by step, rely on your community that you already have built and build upon it, and be sure in yourself and where you are, and that you can always change or make different additions to who you are. Who knows? Maybe after a year, I don't like this job, but there's always, we're still young. We have 80 years to learn something new. So, yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun. I've never been able to talk about like what I'm doing in this facet of rather than, at someone's graduation party. They're like, "What are you doing?" And they're only hearing half of it. It feels very nice to be heard. So
Yeah, of
I thank you.
course. And that's kind of why I'm doing it. Like all of the piece that you said, like the isolation and like people who, you know, we all somehow like, I feel like we talk to each other, but not really, because then you still feel so alone. But it's like, and yet you hear your friends like giving you the same grievances that you have. And it's like, why aren't we all just like realizing that we're in the same boat? You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. And something I've had to practice for me is that like when people are telling you good luck, take it earnestly. Like take it like genuine, like how you give it to other people, receive it in the same way that you're hoping that other people hear it. Um, and I know like I have like some of the biggest supporters, like Lauren back in Austin. I think anything I do, I know I have a number one supporter. And just knowing that when people give you their congratulations or support, like even if at the time you can't really hear it, just know that they mean it, because that really helps like mentally. Like when people are like, I wish you the best. I hope you do this. I hope you do that. And when you're stressed or anxious about the future, it's really easy to brush those aside of being like, well, those people love me. They're just going to say things to support me. But it's really good for your mental health. And at least for me, to like take every word as honesty and genuine, even if you might not believe it from that person. Someone wishing you good luck and good fortune, or that they believe in you, like take it. Take it and think about it, that you have someone, even if they just said it once, that you have someone pushing you forward, because that really helps, especially when it feels isolating, when everyone is complaining and things are tough, that you're not in it alone, and support others just as much as they support you. But it is pretty scary out there, even though things are changing and you're growing up and life looks different than it ever has. You're still yourself. um yeah, you're not waking up for school or going to class, but that person you were waking up early and what movies and stuff you watch, you're still that person. And reminding yourself, like I have to remind myself definitely at times to be like, I like these things, don't be ashamed of liking them. But yeah, loving the things I love and loving the fact that I love them is something that I'm trying to keep in my brain, uh, because things can get scrambling in a new city, a new place, not having a lot of people necessarily around you, but being sure and these main core facets of yourself. But yeah.
Yeah. I love that. Okay, so we can wrap it up. Again, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and doing this. I really appreciate it. And
So
you.
honored. I'm so honored. Thank you. Um, yeah, thank you for having me.
Of course. All right, everyone, thank you for listening. You can find the podcast wherever you get, well, Spotify, Apple, and YouTube. And I will see you on the next one. Bye.
Bye.